Welcome to day 2 of Maha Uncensored. Before we begin, I hope you were able to spread the word about this film. If you haven't yet, please do. Text or DM a friend mahamovie.com. Share it on your social media. It'll take just seconds. We always have a lot of shadow bans and suppression on topics like this, but together we can get the word out. Today's broadcast takes us into the shadowy underbelly of the U.S. healthcare system, a world of kickbacks, cartels, and profiteering from human suffering on a trillion-dollar scale. We'll hear from Dr. Mark Hyman, Peter McCullough, former U.S. Senator Martha McSally, Bobby Kennedy, and more. We'll also dive into one of America's great plagues, the insulin deception that's killing millions of type 2 diabetes sufferers, including the father of one of our speakers. This is Prescription Nightmare.
Are you sure you can cure me? I'm depending on you. I don't have Blue Cross.
If you can't afford the best medical care because you don't have Blue Cross, now that is scary.
I don't feel any better.
The last time you went to your primary care doctor, do you feel like you got the care that you pay for and deserve? The last prescription drug you filled, do you think you need to be on that medication? Are you happy overall with the healthcare institutions and systems that this nation has given us? When we can't get accessibility to the much needed care that we and our families and our employers have paid for, and you're kicked from doctor to doctor in a system that seems to have no answers, but loves to push medications and prescriptions and charge you copays and deductibles, I think we can all agree nobody wants to live in this nightmare.
Healthcare touches every single person, every single family, every single taxpayer. This is something that impacts everybody. I will say, number one, it's complicated. I was 26 years in the military. I was a fighter pilot, first woman in the Air Force to fly a fighter jet in combat, first to command a fighter squadron in America, 6 deployments to the Middle East and Afghanistan, and 325 combat hours in the A-10. After I retired as a colonel, I ran for Congress. We're in a time that's extremely divisive. I mean, I've lived through it in running for office and being in office. But when it comes to this particular issue, most people agree. What we want is for healthcare to be accessible, you want it to be affordable, and you want it to be of quality. That's not what's happening right now in the system.
Why are we spending more than any other first world country, but having some of the worst outcomes? Well, it's because of the costs. You've got to take care of insurance carriers, you've got the hospital system, you've got the manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors, pharmacies. There's so much complexity in our system, which adds to cost at the end of the day. The medicine has not gotten better. The system has not gotten better. With functional medicine, it's a very simple system. It's the patient working with the provider and the provider working with the pharmacy. That's it. That's a very simple system, just like it was back in the day.
To protect public health, modern medical practice enlists the aid of medicines and drugs. And the key figure in this profession is the highly trained registered pharmacist. The pharmacist has a responsibility for ethical and conscientious service to his community. For at one time or another, human life will depend on his ability, accuracy, and integrity.
I'm Brad Hart. I'm the owner of Forest Park Pharmacy with my wife. She's the pharmacist. We opened Forest Park Pharmacy as a little independent in the TCU area of Fort Worth. We took all insurance plans. I assumed when we got started that the problem with insurance was that they were a pain to deal with, and we were going to be really good with our administrative aspects of it. So we were going to be able to handle all of that and get everybody's insurance. After 4 months, we looked at our books and realized that we had been paid 2% less from the insurance companies than it cost us to buy the drugs. So if you're an independent pharmacy and you're taking all the insurance plans, you're getting totally crushed. So we had to make a change. That was when I started to figure out what the problem was with the payment system. We looked into where the money was going because people are paying a ton in their premiums, But when they go to the pharmacy, it's not getting to the pharmacy. So where is that money going in between?
So I'm amazed at how many of my friends that are successful business people, very knowledgeable people, have never heard of PBMs, haven't heard of pharmacy benefit managers. You might think buying prescription drugs works like buying anything else. The manufacturer sets a price, the retailer sells it, customer pays. But prescription drugs, totally different. Here's why. Pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. PBMs are the middlemen between drug companies, insurance companies, and you. They work for insurers and employers, supposedly to bring down drug cost. Here's how they actually operate. Drug companies set a list price. That's the official price of the drug. But then PBMs negotiate rebates from drug manufacturers. The drug company pays the money back to the PBM, who keeps a portion and passes some to the insurance company.
Pharmacy benefit managers were actually established to fight for the American people. The government realized at a point in time that pharmaceutical companies were innovating so fast and bringing new products to market, but they weren't making them affordable for the average American to be able to have accessibility to these crucial treatments. And so the vision of a PBM was to create an entity that would negotiate on behalf of the American people to drive down the cost of prescription drug care and make the medications affordable for us. And like so many other areas of our healthcare system, unfortunately, those institutions were corporately captured.
So PBMs were established in the 1960s really as just a tool to process pharmacy claims. And of course, just like everything, there's loopholes that are found, there's ways to continue to increase profits and screw the taxpayer and screw the patient.
There's a new report now by the Federal Trade Commission. It says pharmacy benefits management companies. Well, they are apparently driving up your out-of-pocket costs for prescription drugs, and they are raking in billions of dollars.
The biggest ones are actually owned by insurance companies. CVS Caremark is owned by Aetna, Express Scripts is owned by Cigna, and Optum Rx is owned by United Healthcare.
So when you look at the three PBMs, CVS, Optum Rx, and Express Scripts, they make up about 80% of the PBMs in this country. United Healthcare, Cigna, and Aetna make up about 50% of the health insurance industry in the U.S. So when you take the 50% and the 80%, you're now starting to see some very tight integration, some controlling of the markets, and you see record profits happening year over year. Basically, the transparency has left the system. This is the original reason why PBMs were set up, to be transparent.
And the reason that became a big problem is rather than negotiating down the cost of our prescription drug care, they started to negotiate up. They went and colluded with the big pharmaceutical industry and said, instead of you selling us insulin for $125 a vial, why don't you sell it to us for $300 a vial and then give us a rebate on the back end? In any other industry, we'd call that a kickback. But in healthcare, apparently, we just call it business as usual, which is a tragedy. We have now aligned the incentives and the interests of the pharmaceutical industry, of the insurance companies, of every chain in the healthcare system to monetize and profiteer off chronic disease. United Healthcare, $361 billion in revenue last year. 60% of that revenue came from the pharmacy benefit manager. They have become nothing more than a profit holding center for big insurance and big pharma. The insurance has literally a dozen levers that it can pull to move and manipulate the marketplace. So they base your prescription drug coverage based off not what drug is best for you, the patient, but what drug is best for their revenue streams.
Why would drug companies pay these rebates? In exchange, the PBM moves their drug higher on something called a formulary, basically a ranked list of covered medications. Higher placement means lower copays for patients, which means more people buy that drug. Here's the problem. To afford these increasingly large rebates, pharmaceutical companies keep raising list prices. They say they're forced to do this to protect their profits from PBM demands. One CEO explained it this way: if you bring a product to market with a low list price in this system, you get punished financially. so list prices skyrocket, while the net price, what drug companies actually receive after rebates, stays relatively flat. But here's the real kicker. Your copay is often based on that inflated list price, not the lower price after rebates. And if you don't have insurance, have a high deductible, or need a drug that's not on your formulary, you could be paying that full, artificially inflated list price. The whole system is shrouded in secrecy. PBMs and drug companies don't release rebate data, calling it proprietary. The result? Different people pay wildly different prices for the same medication, and the complexity itself keeps prices high. That's the PBM problem in a nutshell. Then, when the big insurance companies bought the big pharmacy benefit managers, that's when things really went crazy.
Everybody pays for insurance, and then insurance pays for drugs. So the price is invisible to people. The problem is, the PBMs also control the formulary. So if you don't offer the PBMs a big enough discount that's the rebate, then it's hard to get on the formulary. How can the manufacturers increase the rebates? By increasing the price. So the more expensive the drug is, the better the PBMs can get paid. And nobody can see that because there's 10,000 drugs, and they use some interesting metrics to convince people that they're saving. AWP is the main one that they use. That stands for average wholesale price. That sounds like an amazing metric. Like, yeah, what are all the wholesalers selling it for? Let's average that. We'll pay actually 80% less than that. What a deal. But it's a nonsense number. It's totally fiction. I have no idea where they get it. It's actually proprietary. There's a private company that sets that price, and they don't tell anybody what it is.
And drugs they want to push out of the marketplace, you may have as high as a 50% deductible. So that's how they'll control your prescription drugs and how you fill them and drive consumer behavior.
We get paid from the pharmacy benefits manager. So you pay your premiums, then they decide how much and what's covered after that. Your plan will get a bill that says this particular drug costs, say, $100, and then they'll pay the pharmacy. Now, if it's an independent pharmacy, they'll pay the pharmacy maybe $10, and then there's $90 spread there. That's called spread pricing. They capture that. If they send you to CVS Pharmacy and you have CVS Caremark insurance, they're going to get that full $100. So all that loss in the middle, that's what the PBMs are capturing, and that's how the independent pharmacies are struggling.
At the end of the month, Stru's retail pharmacy in Green Bay will shutter. Nicole Schreiner, the CEO and a pharmacist at Stru's, says the sole reason behind closing that side of its operations is because of the middlemen between pharmacies, drug companies, and insurers.
Last year, a guy started a website to track all the pharmacies that were closing around the country, and I think by the end of the year, it was 9 per day were closing throughout the country, which is unbelievable. You cannot take insurance directly and make profit. So after we dug around, we dropped all insurance plans. We switched to a cost-plus pharmacy. That just means that we charge the cost of the medication. We add 15% on that, and then a $10 service fee. So it's kind of like an auto shop has parts plus labor. That's what we have. We're parts plus labor. When we switched to no insurance, 70% of our patients left right away. Like, oh, okay, no insurance, see ya. And then the other 20% of the 30% that were left dwindled away. So we were left with 10%. So we were slow. We doubled our profit, though, which is crazy. Lose 70% of your patients, double your profit. Explain that. But we did. There's $400 million wasted every year overpaying for metformin ER. Metformin ER, if you were to get that at my pharmacy, out the door, including the $10 fee, the 15% markup, $26 for the prescription. Through Medicare, it's costing them $1,800. So a massive amount of waste is happening there in the middle, and it's just fiction. It's just made up by the PBMs. Another one is abiraterone. Our price is $96. Medicare is paying $3,400. They're wasting $1.4 billion every year on only that drug, just overpaying. If they paid my price and paid for everybody still with no copay, they would save $1.4 billion without any loss of coverage. It's unreal. I've done numbers on 40 of them so far, and $14 billion is the difference on those 40 drugs alone between what it should cost and what Medicare is paying, and Medicare is only 30% of prescriptions. There's a whole 70 other percent of the country that's paying for these. So $14 billion on only 40 drugs on only Medicare. And the way that I get my prices is I just buy them from the wholesalers. There's no mystery about how it happens. The manufacturers sell it to the wholesalers at that low price. I buy it at that low price and I sell it at that low price.
If we focus on prescription drug care, the fact that most of the FDA's funding comes from industry, the fact that 9 out of the last 10 heads of the FDA went to go work for Big Pharma after leaving government service is a problem. We have got to stop allowing this cross-pollination, because what happens is exactly what we saw with the opioid crisis, with Purdue Pharma. You know, Purdue Pharma ramrods a brand new opioid into the market and puts in the label that it's less addictive and less likely to be abused than previous opioids, which is just not the case.
Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted.
We know that hydrocodone versus Oxycontin, Oxy is 8 to 10 times more addictive than hydrocodone. But because of that relationship that the Purdue Pharma family had with the FDA, they were able to push this product into the market, creating and perpetuating the opioid crisis. And then to tie it back to the pharmacy benefit managers and the insurance companies, 30% of the revenue generated off of opioids in America went to the insurance companies. Nobody's talking about that. How did SSRIs ever get into the marketplace to the level they're at? It comes down to the FDA, Big Pharma, and big insurance, prioritizing, again, the ability to grow, manipulate, and control a market. But I launched Prozac. That was my first job out of college, and I remember sitting there going, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't really differentiate from placebo. I don't understand. And I was asking the doctor that's teaching us about this compound, and that's why I left Big Pharma. Within 8 months of them moving me over the antidepressant market, I just said, I can't do this. So I had to get out of there. But the reason being, look at their own data. We are now 25 years down the road of these SSRIs being in the market, and where do we stand as a society? We have more mental health issues than we ever had before. Deaths of despair are at an all-time high, greater than that of the Great Depression. Suicide at an all-time high. And you're telling me that SSRIs and antidepressants are working? How many billions of dollars are we wasting? Because 75% of all prescription drugs are directly or indirectly paid for by us, the taxpayers. It's literally a crisis of the soul, a crisis of humanity.
Months, even years, many patients have struggled to get their prescriptions filled for the popular new diabetes and weight loss drugs.
That frustration has led millions to turn to compounded formulas. And while these drugs are not regulated by the FDA, they are allowed under certain conditions.
Let's start with some compounding basics. When a patient can't take an FDA-approved drug, perhaps because of an allergy or one of the ingredients, or they need a liquid formulation instead of a pill, compounding pharmacists can make a copy. And compounding is also allowed by the FDA when a drug is in short supply. But compounded drugs are not verified for their safety, effectiveness, or quality by the FDA. And for many patients, it's confusing.
This patient, who asked us to call her Lena, turned to compounded tirzepatide only after her insurance stopped covering the FDA-approved Zepbound. But earlier this month, she received this letter from the telehealth company she turned to for her compounded meds, saying they could no longer fill tirzepatide past December 2nd. That's because in October, the FDA declared the drug shortage of tirzepatide resolved.
Big Pharma has lobbied with media to portray compounding pharmacies as the Wild West, as dangerous, as not FDA regulated. All of that is an absolute fallacy. Every single ingredient that a compounding pharmacy uses in America, those ingredients come from FDA-approved sources, from the same wholesalers that all of the big pharmaceutical conglomerates buy their ingredients from. All products are independently third-party validation tested, not only the ingredients, but then the final product. Every single batch goes through that rigorous process. And so these products are absolutely safe. Big Pharma does try to lobby, intimidate, and bully, and they do try to push the government into over-regulating compounding pharmacies, and then they attempt to gain the public's ear by misleading the public on what compounding pharmacies actually are.
Today, people think compounding is weird or not normal. But if you go back and you look at history, 125 years ago, everything was compounded. All drugs were custom made for that individual patient, where you have a apothecary or a druggist pouring, something from a graduated cylinder into an Erlenmeyer flask, shaking it up, and then there's the prescription. That's how all drugs have been made since the beginning of time. It wasn't until the industrialization of pharmaceutical manufacturing where we saw that shift from the mom and pop druggist to a large-scale pharmaceutical manufacturing facility. 100 years ago, 75% of all prescriptions in the United States were compounded. That number has dwindled to about 3% today. Now, doesn't mean that compounding isn't as good. In many cases, it can be better. And doctors and patients are learning that by customizing these prescriptions for their particular biomarkers, their particular age, gender, sex, particular genetic profiles, that may not be best served by a commercial option and may be better served by a more personalized approach. That's why so many more providers and patients are converting from the traditional pharmaceutical supply chain back to the personalized supply chain.
Brittany Fenley is worried she won't be able to stay on medication that's helped her lose 70 pounds since October. So she looked into weight loss drugs such as Wegovy, costing more than $1,000 a month. She could do it because the surging popularity of the GLP-1 drugs created a shortage, prompting the FDA to take emergency action, allowing compounding pharmacies to essentially make generic versions of the drug for a fraction of the cost. But as of Thursday, any compounder that mass produces or sells knockoff drugs is breaking the law.
So on a GLP-1, like a weight loss drug, this is a peptide. We've been making peptides at compounding pharmacies for decades, and peptides are nothing more than short-chain amino acids. And those short-chain amino acids, actually where they discovered this was through Gila monsters, and Gila monsters seem to go long periods of time without being hungry or eating. And a scientist said, that's interesting. We should do an NIH study and research if this could be used as a compound to help treat obesity. Lo and behold, it was. And it's a blockbuster drug. And it's a blockbuster drug that, when distributed through a compounding pharmacy, is a couple $100 mailed to your doorstep. Why is the average wholesale price in America anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a month? We are being bamboozled. We are being robbed blind by the very system that is supposed to protect us and fight on our behalf. It's a slippery slope, because if we allow the pharmaceutical industry to capture peptides, it will shut down all future innovation of peptides for compounding pharmacies, for telemedicine, for any of these things.
Unless they have patents on it.
Correct. So the FDA defaulted right before Secretary Kennedy and Donald Trump took control. They expired the exemption that was allowing compounding pharmacies to make cost-effective alternatives that patients could utilize.
Because Big Pharma lobbies more than any other industry, they influence a lot of congressmen, women, and other legislators to do what is in their best interests. Whereas us as an industry, we're just trying to do what's in the patient's best interests by trying to lower costs over time. That is not amenable to Big Pharma and the other middlemen that are making money hand over fist with the current healthcare system that we have in place that increases cost by about 10% a year on average. Utilizing a compounding pharmacy where prices don't go up over time, they actually go down over time. They could potentially result in better treatment outcomes. Well, better treatment outcomes at a lower cost, that's the holy grail of healthcare right there.
But you've got to follow, where are the incentives? Because businesses are going to act based on where their incentives are. The government will act where the incentives are, right? And the government is deeply involved in healthcare. I mean, we've spent almost $5 trillion on healthcare. Nearly 20% of our GDP is on healthcare. We're spending more than 6 times our military budget on healthcare. You've got these massive insurance companies who now own the PBMs that are basically price gouging on the pharmaceuticals. You've got the big pharma companies, and their incentives, each of them, is to continue to jack up the prices. They're getting more and more monopoly share, so there's no competition. There's also no transparency.
A doctor convinced one of my patients to switch away from my pharmacy, and I was really confused, like, why would the doctor care if she was getting it here? It was cheaper. It was a third of the cost for us. She worked for a big insurance company practice, and they incentivized them to get patients to fill their prescriptions at their pharmacies. So they want the doctors to encourage the patients to get them filled there, and they do that by giving them med star ratings. If their patients fill enough of their prescriptions consistently, it increases their star rating, and they get a financial bonus at the end of the year if they've done well enough on that. Even though you've been paying $400 a month, $900 a month, for your total insurance, you're paying $9,000 a year or $25,000 a year. How can you pay that? And they're still finding a way to profit. But all of them are vertically integrated. Express Scripts, Optum, CVS, they're all insurance, pharmacy, providers, hospitals, they own everything. They're all a big network.
Why don't we start with the medical schools, right? These are all funded by Big Pharma. So, these medical schools are not putting out doctors who are taught anything about nutrition, about integrative medicine, about functional medicine. They're not being taught about exercise. They're really being given Big Pharma's playbook. So they are well-versed coming out into the community to basically have this at their fingertips. When they get put into the big healthcare system, big healthcare is driving exactly what it is they need to do and how they need to do it. They are restricted by what the electronic health record system tells them they can and can't do. These doctors are taskmasters. They are being asked to provide quality metrics and star ratings and HEDIS measures. Those metrics are the health system's metrics and Medicare metrics. Those metrics are not about the patient care. So what we're seeing is that these patients are being prescribed medications. In many cases, they should not be being prescribed these medications because they do see this as profit centers.
But beyond that, what people don't realize is they decide when you get surgery, how you get surgery, how you get a blood test, how you get an MRI, how you get any sort of comprehensive workup.
The insurance-owned surgery centers get paid more than the independent surgery centers. The doctors that work for the independent practices get paid less than the insurance company-owned practices. It's happening everywhere because it's the same exact model.
There's no incentive to rush you into surgery and spend a bunch of money on a surgical procedure. So the next step, now you finally get your MRI. It's validated that you need surgery. You go out there, you interview all the surgeons in your area, you find the best and brightest surgeon to do the job, and the insurance says, no, we're gonna choose your surgeon. And by the way, you got a $10,000 out-of-pocket expense. And by the way, if the hospital doesn't collect that expense, we have means to go after the hospital and deny paying that hospital. Even the hospitals are terrified of the insurance companies because if the insurance companies do dig and litigate, what they're gonna find is the hospital captured a fraction of the copays. And the contract reads you have to collect copays and deductibles. But the average American can't afford their copays or deductibles. That's why healthcare costs are the #1 reason for bankruptcy in America. The way they've run this system, a doctor has 6 minutes with a patient on average to cover family history, what are your ailments, what are your issues, and then you go, okay, well, I want to pull blood work. Can't do that. And I can give you the real world example of how they can't do that. When I educated these clinicians on the importance of comprehensive blood work, I had hundreds of primary care clinicians throughout the state of Texas pulling comprehensive blood panels, doing the deep dive, attempting to try and do what's right for the patient. Because let's be clear, the patient is paying for this care. Within 60 days, the big insurance conglomerates sent out nasty letters to clinicians telling them, if you continue to pull this blood work, we will cancel your contract. And if I'm a primary care in Texas, I'm terrified. I'm underpaid, overworked, I gotta see 40 patients a day, I have staff overhead, student loans. They're just victims of a system that has let them and the patient down. And that system is controlled front to back, top to bottom by industry, by big pharmaceuticals and by big insurance.
So people assume that when you use your insurance, they're taking the money that you've given them and you're paying for service. But what's really happening is they're profiting. So they want you to use your insurance because your insurance company makes more money when you do that, but they also charge your employer more money. When they have that profit, they also tell your employer that it actually costs a lot more than it cost you last year. So that causes your premiums to rise. So the more you use your insurance, the more profit they make, the more power they have to negotiate higher premiums for the next year. That's why our insurance premiums have been skyrocketing, even though our coverage hasn't increased. Drugs have gotten cheaper, insurance has gotten more expensive. What's happening?
We're in the situation that we're in from World War II, where we have employer-sponsored healthcare. We were trying to have wage controls, and then companies were competing for workers, so they decided to start adding other benefits. And now this is kind of the way we do business here in America. The vast majority of people are getting their health insurance from their employer. And the big businesses are the ones that can offer better plans for people. But sadly, even those who think they have quality health insurance with a large company, over 2/3 of the Americans who file for bankrupt are because of medical debt. And those are people not just without insurance, people with insurance, because the costs are just too high.
I got a text message literally from a couple that live in Dalton, small business owners. My premiums are $1,700 a month for two people, and their deductible is $10,000 a year, and at the same time they're trying to take care of their aging parents. Everyone's just getting destroyed. Look, Democrats, you created this mess. Republicans, you have no solutions. You haven't come up with a new plan in place, and we're not even talking about it. Let's take off our Democrat jerseys, let's take off our Republican jerseys, and we should do something responsible for the American people and fix this.
Let's be honest, Republicans and Democrats were implicit in causing the problem and perpetuating the problem. And it is going to take Republicans and Democrats to fix the problem. And it's so easy to allow these big corporations to polarize us, to lobby with Democrats, to lobby with Republicans, and to turn us against each other. But the truth is, we are in this together. And the only way we fix this is together. Big insurance did 4 times the revenue of Big Pharma, and nobody's talking about them until Bobby brought up PBMs to Trump, and now Trump is finally starting to understand who these middlemen really are. It's all just an illusion.
Our plan will end the dishonest double dealing that allows the middleman to pocket rebates and discounts that should be passed on to consumers and patients. We're very much eliminating the middlemen. The middlemen became very, very rich.
President Trump announcing that early next year, the price of weight loss drugs Wegovy and Zepbound will be dropping drastically, potentially impacting millions of Americans, including seniors on Medicare.
This is a triumph for American patients that will save lives and improve the health of millions and millions of Americans.
Those on Medicare will pay just a $50 copay. Access will also be expanded for qualifying people on Medicaid, who could end up paying virtually nothing.
Obesity is the #1 driver of chronic disease, and it drives about 50% of healthcare costs in this country. Diabetes, cardiac diseases, we are going to see a decline because of this historic agreement. Obesity is a disease of poverty, overwhelmingly, and these drugs have only been available for people who have wealth. This is going to have the biggest impact on the American people. All Americans, even those who are not on Medicaid and Medicare, are going to be able to get the same price for their GLP drugs. And it is a momentous accomplishment. The American public, because of this agreement, will lose 125 million pounds by this time next year. It is going to have dramatic effects on human health in this country. It will allow a lot of people who are locked into high-risk obesity to finally lose weight, to reset, and then start doing the kind of things that will address the root causes of obesity.
As the brother of a victim to the opioid crisis, the son to a victim of the diabetes crisis, and a sibling to a victim of the mental health crisis, I can tell you that the stakes are not only real, but they're personal. I would implore you, next time you have the privilege of having dinner with your family, look around the table and ask yourselves, when you look into their eyes, what you would give to have another year with that family member, another month of health and happiness and joy and memories and moments, because that was something that was taken from my family during the opioid crisis. This is a humanity issue. If we really truly want to address the chronic disease crisis in this country, we have to start by preventing these diseases from occurring in the first place. There is a cancer in our healthcare system. That cancer is big industry, a broken system fueled by corruption and collusion.
I've been screaming from a mountaintop for years, and if it wasn't for Bobby and Callie Means in this MAHA movement, I don't know if that Senate hearing would have ever happened. And it was honestly surreal to sit in that room and to finally be able to give a voice to so many people who have lost their lives or whose lives have been ruined. I lost my brother to the opioid crisis. That's what started my journey. And the American people are fighting back. And thank God, I do feel like politicians are listening. I think it's a complicated system, and I think they're struggling to wrap their head around how do we fix it. But a lot of the ideas that have already been floated out make total sense to me and could put quick, easy wins on the board to help fight off the death and destruction that we've been experiencing over the last 20 years. The real challenge is the giant corporate capture of these institutions. And we've got to expose the corruption, acknowledge the corruption, and treat the disease. What we're doing is not working. We've got to fight against these insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies for the betterment of humanity.
So we're in this vicious cycle with these companies, and we just have to find a way to kick them out. That's what we did. I always talk about it, fire the middleman, get them out of the way so that we can bring costs back to reality. So the way that the manufacturers help us is on the generics. Generics are rock bottom prices in the US, almost the best in the world. Low cost generic medications are just simple, they're right there, and we can get them out the door very affordably. We don't need to involve a monolithic, vertically integrated insurance company between you and something that simple. Your doctor knows what you need, your pharmacist knows what you need, you can get it done easily. One of the biggest problems I have at my pharmacy is convincing people to actually pay for drugs, because everybody has insurance. So when they come in and I say, no, I don't take insurance, then it just goes blank. You know, like, I have insurance, I'm not gonna pay for anything.
We're born to believe that if we were to use cash, that it would be more expensive than insurance. Think of that as an oil change. Would you use your car insurance to pay for an oil change? No, probably not. But that's what we do with our current healthcare system. We use insurance for everything, whereas insurance was designed only to cover catastrophic risk. Compounding pharmacies and entities like ourselves, being the vertically integrated supply chains that we are, we kick out the insurance carriers and the PBMs from the equation. And by doing that, we found that we can lower our costs by 4/5, by 80%. So instead of a patient paying $100 for a medication, they're paying $20 for a medication, working with us and their provider directly, and then not working with any of the unnecessary middlemen. It's no mystery that Big Pharma does not like competition. And then you have this massive industry misinforming the public on the benefits of compounded medicine so that they can keep pushing their prescription drugs that keep increasing in price and actually support disease states, whereas compounded medicine, particularly functional medicine, prevent disease states from happening in the first place. So Big Pharma is not happy with the fact that, one, we're creating competition for them, but two, that we're preventing disease states that their medicines could treat.
And let's start having some more purchasing power by patients so that they have more options and they can look for, you know what, I'm gonna go to what we call direct primary care. I'm gonna pay $50 to $100 a month to have a primary care doc who's more functionally focused, who's gonna spend an hour with me talking about my symptoms, is going to talk to me about diet and nutrition and movement and other things, and we're gonna come up with a plan to keep me healthy so that I can continue to thrive, I can continue to be productive in the workforce, I can take care of my family, and you keep me out of the emergency room and you keep me out of, preventing chronic diseases. Like, some of these initiatives we could do right now. Meantime, nearly $5 trillion we spent last year on healthcare, nearly 20% of our GDP, on average, twice as much per person as other developed countries. And we're like barely in the top 50 in life expectancy. We're not getting the health outcomes from what we're paying for.
We would love to see the MAHA movement do what our brave providers and patient advocates have been doing for the past 20 years, informing patients and providers of the options available to them and taking Big Pharma's foot off of our necks, taking big insurance's foot off of our necks, letting us all play on a level playing field, and then letting the patient decide at the end of the day what they think is in their best interests, and making a more virtuous healthcare system. That is exactly what is needed in this country at this time.
The system's not broke, the system's rigged, and we're the ones fitting the bill. And it's not just in dollars, we're fitting the bill in human lives and capital, and lost brothers, sisters, mothers, and fathers. We lose 1.7 million people a year to chronic disease in this country, more than every war we've ever fought combined. If this was a foreign nation, it would be an act of war. We've got to declare war on these PBMs, these big insurance companies, the corruption, the collusion, and the corporate capture. And that's why I'm so excited about this MAHA movement and what Bobby's doing to shed light on all of these broken aspects of our healthcare system.
I'm somebody who looks physically healthy, and I am physically healthy, mentally healthy, but for most of my life, this was not the case. Growing up in Miami, Florida, my parents were divorced, and I was pretty much left to my own devices as a kid. I followed the standard American diet. I ate that frequently, fast food, and I had bad behaviors growing up, addictions to drugs and video games and a toxic environment, and I was obese as a kid. My whole body felt like it was inflamed every single day. I remember going to the mall and walking around for more than an hour. I would have to wear knee braces just to get through that hour because I was that inflamed as a 23-year-old man, young man. But my father had type 2 diabetes my entire life, and I didn't understand it as a kid. I just remember my dad going to his doctor's appointments, getting his medication. And when I was an adult, I would actually take him to his doctor's appointments, and every Tuesday, I went to go visit him. There was never a conversation I had with his doctors about reversing his type 2 diabetes. It was all about managing it. And the medication, especially the insulin, caused him to gain weight, which put a lot more inflammation on his body, which made the disease worse year after year. In 2013, my dad called me. He was experiencing debilitating diabetic neuropathy. And for those who don't know, neuropathy is very common in diabetics. Essentially, you lose blood flow to your extremities, like your feet and your fingers, and it creates a sensation of burning and needles, where it could be very painful and it could progress to the point where you have difficulty walking. And that's exactly what happened to my dad. He couldn't even walk to the restroom, and he called me. Me and my mother, we pick him up and we take him to the hospital, and we take him to the emergency room in Miami, Mount Sinai Medical Center. And what happened in the hospital, within 24 hours, he suffered a massive stroke, and it left him paralyzed, left him with the inability to speak. And they transferred him to hospice care, my dad. And I would visit my dad every single week at the hospice. And it was a very difficult time in my life because every time I visited my dad, I felt like his body was shrinking before my eyes. And I would just show up for him and let him know about what's going on in my life and play music for him and just update him on what's happening in the world. And this went on for about 9 months. And I remember it was August 11th, 2014. It was Monday night. I walked into the hospice room like I always did. And I walk in, and he was in the worst shape I'd ever seen him in. He was throwing up, he was convulsing. It was really difficult to look at. So I rushed in the hallway. I'm flagging down the nurses, the doctors, like, my dad needs help, please get in here. And they came into the room and they start working on him and cleaning him up. And a few hours later, he was a lot better. And I remember walking up to him that night as I was leaving for the night. And I looked at him right in the eyes, and I told him how much I loved him. I said, you're always going to be my father. I'm always going to be your son. I love you. And I whispered the words hasta la vista, baby. And the significance of that is he always said that when he said goodbye to me from the movie Terminator. He just loved that movie as a kid. I loved it too, and I said that to him. And you know, I was driving home that night and I was crying, and I got home and I prayed like I did every night. I prayed for my dad to not have to suffer anymore. I prayed for for God to end his suffering. So within 24 hours after that happened, I see my phone is ringing, and I look at the phone, and it's the hospice calling me, and my heart just sunk in my chest. I pick up, and it's the nurse letting me know that my father passed away that morning. Part of me had solace. My dad no longer is in pain. I no longer have to see him in so much pain, and he was suffering for so long. But the other part of me was just so angry, and I had so many questions. Like, why didn't his doctors discuss reversing his diabetes? Diabetes type 2 is a lifestyle condition that is treated with medication. There's a huge mismatch there. And medication for type 2 diabetes actually makes the condition worse because the medication treats the symptom of high blood sugar levels. But that's not the cause of type 2 diabetes. The cause of type 2 diabetes is excessive insulin production and too much cell inflammation.
At the level of the whole body, there are two primary fuels that the body is primarily relying on at any given moment. The body is primarily in sugar burning mode, or burning blood glucose for fuel, or it's in fat burning mode. Now usually it's a mix of the two, but insulin is the determinant, the single sole determinant of which fuel is being used. If insulin is elevated, the body shifts its metabolic processes to rely on sugar. So the body is sugar burning mode when insulin is up. In contrast, when insulin is down, sugar burning has turned down and fat burning has now stepped up to meet the body's energetic needs. The problem then, when we consider this dynamic of blood sugar and insulin, we now live in a culture where what was once an infrequent and modest rise in blood sugar is now a constant increase in blood sugar. Globally, 70% of all calories are coming from carbohydrates. One of the great tragedies of this entire thing is that among the macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, there are such things as essential fats that a person must eat lest they become diseased and die. There are such things as essential amino acids, so in the form of proteins that a person must eat lest they get sick and die. Crickets are chirping when you start to talk about the essential carbohydrates. There's literally no such thing. Now, I'm not saying we can't eat them. I don't mean to suggest that. But why on earth would we have a global food structure that is built on the one we don't need, and tragically is the one that spikes insulin the most and can contribute thereby to metabolic problems and weight gain? Let's shift the global plate to focus on the ones we need, which humans actually have a requirement for, and thankfully don't have an insulin response. Not only are we eating mostly carbohydrate, but we've been told that we ought to eat 5 or 6 times a day. And so the average individual, who's not only eating a lot of carbs, wakes up in the morning. We immediately spike our blood sugar with some sugar coffee, a bagel, and some other kind of sweets. So it's immediately a very starchy, sugary, high-carb breakfast. So insulin skyrockets. The person, an hour or two after their breakfast, let's say 2 hours, they now feel like they're ready for their mid-morning snack. And so they bump it up again. And then they do the same with lunch, their afternoon snack, with dinner, and then of course their bedtime snack. And so the average individual is spending every waking moment in a state of elevated insulin. And too much insulin is the primary driver of insulin resistance. Like most problems, type 2 diabetes is based on the glucose. But it is an insulin problem first and foremost, but we don't acknowledge that. So we only look at the glucose. And so the conventional clinician is looking at the patient's glucose and says, boy, your glucose is really high. We're going to lower your glucose by giving you even more insulin. The tragedy in this scenario, the failure to acknowledge the accurate paradigm is such that by pushing the insulin up even higher, all in an effort to control the glucose, Now, knowing what we know, the relevance of insulin, it's no surprise that you make this person fatter and you kill them faster. So when you are more aggressively pushing up insulin in a person with type 2 diabetes to control their glucose, they become 3 times more likely to die from heart disease, 2 times more likely to die from cancer, and twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. Because all of these chronic diseases are not driven by glucose. That's the Robin to the Batman. The main character here is the insulin. But again, our glucose-centric paradigm has no regard for insulin. But giving a type 2 diabetic more insulin to control their glucose is like giving an alcoholic another glass of wine, hoping it's going to improve their alcoholism. You're giving them more of the very thing that's causing the problem.
The problem with diabetes is that we consider diabetes an isolated issue. Diabetes is an arbitrary marker of blood sugar dysregulation. 60% of American adults have prediabetes. They have blood sugar dysregulation. Now, as I mentioned, it's 38% of US teens have blood sugar dysregulation. So diabetes is not a siloed issue. It's a indicator of the fact that so much glucose is coming into our system that our cells are kicking it out, that they can't use enough of it for energy, and it's going into our bloodstream and wreaking havoc around our bodies. Diabetes is an indicator of many other problems. If you're diabetic, 98% of people that have diabetes have at least one other comorbidity. The vast majority have multiple comorbidities. If you are a person under 30 and have diabetes, you die on average 15 years earlier than an adult without diabetes. You are almost signing yourself up just irreparably for a life of heart disease, a life of potential cancer, a life of depression. You're 3 times more likely to be depressed or suicidal. You know, diabetes is highly connected to many forms of cancer. You're much more likely to be getting pancreatic cancer, for instance, if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. Right now, statin prescriptions have skyrocketed among high schoolers. They've doubled in the last 5 years. So a bunch of high schoolers are going on statins. But instead of explaining really this almost spiritual issue that that child's body's crying out for help, it's a 15-minute appointment where that kid gets on a statin for the rest of their life. Same thing with metformin. Metformin prescriptions have skyrocketed among teens. Metformin is used to control blood sugar. If a child's blood sugar is dysregulated, and now 38% of teens have prediabetes, have extremely dysregulated blood sugar, that's a totally unprecedented dynamic where 50 years ago that rate was 0. Instead of talking about what that means for that child's body and how if the child doesn't get that under control, they're going to have a host of other issues in their life.
What we have seen in the last few years, though, is we've seen an obesity pandemic where everybody has started to gain weight. And this has really come on in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. While smoking has gone down from 50% to 17% or so, weight has gone up. And as weight has gone up, we have seen orthopedic issues, a whole industry of hip replacements and knee replacements and back surgery. We've seen diabetes explode. 90% of type 2 diabetes is simply from being too fat for too long. Rates of high blood pressure go up. Rates of coronary heart disease, which should have really gone down with smoking, and they did to some degree, rates of coronary heart disease staying stable. And then sadly, some cancers going up that are obesity-related cancers like breast cancer and female reproductive cancers. We need to make America healthier from where it is now. And I hold great hope in so many areas. So if my grandmother can live to 99 without paying a single thought to eating a healthy diet or exercising her whole life, what does it look like now if somebody through their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond actually tries to eat healthy and exercise? We have no idea. Those people have yet to get to their 90s. Maybe it's possible to live way past 100. That's very possible. What about weight? If one maintains a healthy body weight through their life, they can almost guarantee themselves they won't develop diabetes. So some of the modern epidemiologic cardiovascular studies have shown that only 10% of us are able to keep our weight within plus or minus 10 pounds of our high school age 18 weight. 90% of people, their waistline is expanding, and then they go on a weight loss journey later on to some degree of effectiveness. And everything shows that attempting to lose weight and losing weight confers a benefit. So even the person who attempts to lose weight and doesn't lose a pound still is better off than the person who never tries.
Well, people are listening, but they're listening to the noise that's coming out of conventional media. They're listening to the commercials, or listening to the food industry's talking points. I mean, they're very good at creating a narrative that seems righteous and, noble, but it's a lie. They say, it's no good or bad calories. It's about, calories in, calories out. Just eat less, exercise more. All food in moderation. Nonsense. There's definitely foods that make you sick, and there's foods that make you well. All calories are not the same. For example, carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, not broccoli, but refined carbohydrates like sugar and starch are the biggest drivers of metabolic dysfunction, and this has been proven over and over at major academic institutions. They also are now saying, as they start talking about ultra-processed food, people aren't going to be able to afford food. It's not convenient for them. You're going to be discriminating against the poor and the underserved. That's baloney. It's propaganda, and it's actually causing people to be confused about what the truth is. And that's their goal. So I feel we have to fight back. Chile did it. They got rid of all the cartoon characters on kids' food. They put warning labels like stop signs in the front of all food packaging that says that this has got too much sugar, salt, or saturated fat. They put an 18% soda tax, which I think is very controversial in this country. They eliminated infant formula marketing. They eliminated all junk food from kids' schools. They eliminated all advertising on television from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. of any junk food. So they really did a comprehensive set of sweeping policies that has made a huge impact on the health of that country. There are many other countries that are doing the same. Mexico is starting to do that. European have done that. We have 10,000 chemicals in the food in America. There's 400 in European Union. I was thinking about the smoking cigarettes, or ads that were anti-smoking ads that we had in the 70s. They were very effective. They showed a Marlboro man with a cigarette which had kind of fallen down, and things like that. They were kind of suggestive of what happens if you smoke. And I think we need the same sort of campaign for our food. There's all kinds of imaging we could show that would convince Americans that this is what's happening in their bodies, and they have control over it. They have the control over the problem that is affecting them. And I want people to be empowered to be the CEO of their own health, and to understand that they can't abdicate their health to the food industry, to the government, to doctors, that they have to be empowered. And the government should be the protectors of the population. They're not. They're serving industry.
It's very interesting what the medical community puts emphasis on. The medical community is able to make a point very well, and Americans listen. When the Surgeon General said smoking was bad, smoking rates plummeted. When the food pyramid came out in the 1990s and said that eating sugar and carbs were great, we ate more sugar and carbs. So we listen to medical leaders, and medical leaders know when to make a point, right? When the medical leaders say to do something, public policy makers, funding, parents, they all listen. So it's interesting that the point of emphasis for children is you need to take substitute shots at the exact appropriate time that we say no exceptions. But when it comes to childhood nutrition, it's, kids can eat whatever they want. There's affordability issues. We can't stigmatize food. Ultra-processed food is fine. Why aren't they using that same emphasis to talk about childhood diabetes? Why isn't the medical community saying we should not have childhood obesity in this country? We need to eradicate it from the face of the earth in the next 5 years with the same emphasis they said to do COVID lockdowns. It's very suspect and very interesting where people are focusing. The entire emphasis of the medical establishment in the past 20 years has been on infectious disease control. 8% of deaths in the United States are on infectious disease. 92% are on chronic disease. The word chronic disease did not appear in the Biden administration's HHS priority document. The word diabetes did not appear in the entire priority document for the Health and Human Services Department. The word obesity did not appear. The word vaccines appeared 32 times. The word equity appeared 25 times. The emphasis of the medical system is very, very suspect. If you take a broad view of what's happening to the American people, we are being absolutely destroyed by chronic disease. That has been an absolute blind spot, to the point where senators, when they were questioning Kennedy during his confirmation, said, "Is all you're focused on chronic disease? Is that it?" They literally asked him that. It's 92% of deaths.
President Trump has asked me to end the chronic disease epidemic and make America healthy again.
Is that the only reason why then you're at the HHS to address that one issue?
Our ship is sinking. Our 60% increase in Medicaid over the past 4 years is the biggest budget line now, and it's growing faster than any other. And no other nation in the world has what we have here. No other nation has a chronic disease. We have the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world. We had, during COVID, we had 16% of the COVID deaths in a country. We only have 4.2% of the world's population. We had a higher death count than any country in the world. And when CDC was asked why, they said it's because Americans are the sickest people on earth. The average person who died from COVID, American, had 3.8 chronic diseases. This is an existential threat economically to our military, to our health, to our sense of well-being.
The United States is becoming fatter, sicker, more depressed, and more infertile at an increasing rate while bankrupting our country with medical costs. If those trends are not reversed, the American experiment will end. It is a civilizational issue. We poison our population and then drug them to manage the disease. 95% of our healthcare spending is on management of disease, not on reversing or curing. Every single institution in our healthcare system is predicated on people being sicker for longer periods of time. The pharmaceutical industry makes money when someone gets sick, and then they're able to get those statins, get that metformin, get that SSRI, get that Ozempic, to be on that treadmill for life. That's how pharma makes money. Hospitals make money when beds are full, not empty. And insurance companies actually make money when people get sicker.
Very importantly, by law, they can only make 15% profit margin, but they are able to raise premiums in order to get that 15%. So when you have an incentive where you're only able to get 15% but can raise your prices, you want prices to rise in order to get 15% of a larger pie. That's the explicit incentive of insurance companies, which means they want people to be sicker, which is exactly what's happened. Healthcare insurance premiums have been the single largest source of US inflation in the last 10 years. They've doubled in the last 10 years because they're explicitly incentivized for you as a patient to be sicker.
We know that in the United States, we spend about over $4 trillion a year on healthcare, all right? About $4.6 trillion a year, which would be the fourth largest GDP in the world if it was a GDP. 1 in every $4 is spent on diabetes, primarily type 2 diabetes.
We spend 3 times more per capita than any other developed country on healthcare and live 7 years less than many European countries. So we have a situation where by the direct incentives of our system, we are about to go bankrupt from healthcare costs, which are not slowing down. Healthcare costs are growing 2 times the rate of the GDP. They're 20% now, so in 15 years or so, they'll be 40%. If the United States experiment fails, it will not be because of the social justice issues the media is trying to get us whipped up on. It will not be because we have the wrong marginal tax rate. It will not be because we don't have the optimal rate of military spending. It will be because we let ourselves get fatter, more depressed, more infertile, and sicker at an exponentially increasing rate while bankrupting the country.
We get paid for procedures. We get paid for doing scopes and for doing surgeries and for doing all sorts of medical procedures, but we don't get paid for cognitive services. I could take a patient, for example, who we saw, who was costing probably hundreds of thousands of dollars here in the system. She was 66 years old. Her body mass index was 43. She was severely obese. Normal is like 25 or less. She had type 2 diabetes for 10 years on insulin. She had heart failure. She had kidneys were starting to fail. She had fatty liver. She had hypertension. She had couple stents put in. She was a mess. She was on $20,000 of copay for medication. And within 3 days of changing her diet and being in our group program, she was off her insulin. In 3 months, she was off all her medications, had reversed her heart failure, reversed her diabetes, reversed her high blood pressure, and her fatty liver was normalized and her kidneys were improved. And she lost 116 pounds in a year. And we did it just through food and lifestyle changes.
This is why the traditional view with type 2 diabetes is it's an irreversible disease. That's what they say. Because if you adopt the traditional approach, which is drugs, you will never get off that drug. You will only hope to manage your glucose and maybe improve your insulin, although it's less common, by taking this drug forever. The dose will have to go up. You'll have to take more and more medications as the medication stops working as well. and you will have a customer for life because the disease will never go away. Type 2 diabetes, which is itself derivative of insulin resistance, is a disease of lifestyle. The food we eat is the culprit or the cure. At the moment, it's the culprit. It's driving these disorders, but it has the opportunity to be part of the solution. So when we acknowledge that food is driving the disease, then we look at food to reverse it.
In 2016, the Mayo Clinic put out a study to determine how many Americans live an active, healthy lifestyle. And they used 4 characteristics to determine if they fit that criteria. So the first characteristic was they don't smoke cigarettes. The second criteria was that they exercise moderate to vigorous activity for at least 150 minutes total per week. The third criteria was that they eat a healthy diet, which is considered a minimally processed diet. The fourth and last criteria was that if they're a male, they have a body fat percentage under 20% and female under 30%. And they looked at thousands of Americans. At the end of the study, they came to the conclusion that only 2.7% of Americans fit the criteria of an active, healthy lifestyle. That's it. Harvard is saying that by the year 2030, 50% of the entire population in the United States will be obese. When I did my initial health transformation, it was with some basic changes, and I was actually really focused on calories in versus calories out back then, which is a very popular way for people to lose weight, but it's not the best way. It's kind of outdated, if you will, the old calorie deficit to lose weight. And the reason why I say that is because you may lose weight. You probably will lose weight if you put your body in a caloric deficit at the beginning. But the body's very smart, and the metabolism will match the energy coming in. So the metabolism starts to become inefficient. All of a sudden, it's more difficult to lose the weight. You have to keep cutting your calories, and you can only go so far. We've seen this with like the television show The Biggest Loser, where these contestants lost a whole bunch of weight, and all of a sudden they gained the weight back. And we just see it time after time. But I did that approach, but the weight was starting to come back for me because I didn't do it the right way. I was focusing on calories, not hormones and inflammation, which is the most important thing. The cool thing, the amazing thing about keto, it's not technically a diet, it's a metabolic process. The process of burning fat and producing ketones. With these stats of people that are metabolically unhealthy, they're stuck burning sugar. There's nothing wrong with burning sugar unless you're only burning sugar. What happens is this, the first domino to fall, which leads to metabolic dysfunction, is high levels of insulin. Okay, insulin is a hormone that we know stores fat. It's an energy sensor, and insulin is not bad unless insulin is being called every single day. It is kind of the bully of your hormones. When insulin is around, other hormones go into hiding, which are your fat-burning hormones. So the 93% of Americans that are metabolically unhealthy, they're in a keto deficiency. They forgot how to burn fat. So keto is essential for them to switch from burning sugar to burning fat. What happens when you're in ketosis, you lower glucose and insulin. When we think about the 3 macronutrients, carbohydrates, protein, and fat, it's carbohydrates that spike insulin the most, way more than protein and fat. Protein is a moderate spike, and fat doesn't really even raise blood insulin levels. So with keto, you're eating more protein and fat, you're eating a lot less carbohydrates, which lowers glucose, lowers insulin, lowers inflammation. And the cool thing about keto, there's nothing new about it. It's a metabolic process that has been around since humans have existed. All of our ancestors did keto. How do I know this? Well, they didn't have food all the time. They had to fast. When you fast, you go into ketosis. This is just a natural way the metabolism switches to burning fat for energy. Ketones are present when you're burning stored body fat. Those who are overweight, insulin resistant, they need to burn stored body fat. Keto is the key that unlocks stored body fat. The first step is to gradually decrease your total carbohydrates to under 50 total grams per day. The average American is consuming around 300 to 400 grams of carbs per day. They're also snacking and grazing throughout the day. There was a patient population study that came out by a colleague, Dr. Don Klum, that showed the average American eats 17 to 23 times per day. The second step is to stop snacking, have 3 meals a day. breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You also want to consume healthy fats with those meals. Saturated fats like butter, ghee, beef tallow, red meat, fish, pork, eggs. By doing this, on day 6, day 7, now you should have unlocked fat-burning ketosis. There's a student, Shannon, who entered my program with type 2 diabetes, and she had diabetes for many years. She was on insulin, and within about 65, 70 days of doing keto, fasting, following our protocol, she was able to get off of her insulin with the work of her doctor, reverse her type 2 diabetes. She lost about 35 pounds within that time frame. She lowered her blood pressure. She looked amazing, and it was a really amazing example of how incredible the human body is. It's so adaptable. I mean, if I just think about how many hits we take on a day-to-day basis with environmental toxins and artificial ingredients and seed oils and high fructose corn syrup, God has built this body to be so incredibly strong. We're doing so much damage. We're designed to live to 120 at least, yet our lifespan in the United States is what, 78, 77? We're doing 40, 50 years worth of damage.
Even my own lab, in collaboration with a local clinic, we took 11 people who were newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. They had every marker of type 2 diabetes. And they were given an option, this was published as a case report, that you can leave the clinic with a prescription for an anti-diabetic drug, or you can leave with a prescription to meet with a nutritionist and start to learn how to adopt these 3 principles I spoke about earlier. Control carbs, prioritize protein, don't fear fat. These 11 in this case report adopted and elected to go through that nutrition support. At the end of the only 90 days, just 3 months of intervention, not a single one of them had a single evidence, a speck of type 2 diabetes anymore. Every marker that is relied on, glucose, A1C, was all normal. Within just 90 days, the disease had been cured, or to maybe be a little more diplomatic, reversed. But that is, again, a disease that is otherwise considered irreversible, that you are going to live with it for life and it will never go away. Because if you adopt the typical clinical approach, which is to drug the disease, you will never get off those drugs. You will only ever be trimming at the branches of the tree, addressing symptoms. But if you acknowledge that this is caused by the way I'm living, what I'm eating, and how frequently I'm eating it, by manipulating those variables, now you've removed the issue.
Alvin Toffler said, "The illiterate of the 21st century is not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." A lot of what we've been taught by the medical community, we need to unlearn and relearn. It's gotten us down the wrong path. It's the exact opposite of what we should be doing. It's the Costanza, the George Costanza effect from the TV show Seinfeld, where he did the opposite and got amazing results. This is kind of the world we live in the United States. Now, with this MAHA movement, I'm excited because that's looking to change things, but up until this point, when we do the opposite of what the medical mainstream tells us to do, we're going to actually go down the right direction, the right path. I didn't know this, so I started to study this, and I came to discover that the same information that I'm sharing today, I share on stages all across the world in my books, is the same information that would have saved my father's life. I could have applied it, it could have saved him. He could see all the cool things I'm up to today. But I also get that I was given that mountain so I could show the world the mountain can be moved, right? It's all about metabolic health. The body is incredible. You remove the interference, it has this inner physician, this innate intelligence that will heal it. My pain to purpose story is my story, but mostly my dad's story. I don't want him to suffer, and I have a mission. It's going to change the way the world views diabetes. It's going to change the paradigm on diabetes, and our mission is to reverse type 2 diabetes in 1 million people in the next 10 years and track each person and show this largest case study in the world, shove it in Big Pharma's face, and look, your medications don't do what we did. We did it naturally, and that's to honor my father. It's why I'm so grateful to be a part of the whole MAHA movement.
When I hear Ben's plan to reverse diabetes in 1 million people, it gives me so much hope. And that's a big part of our mission with MAHA Uncensored. We're not just here to expose the heart of our medical industrial complex. We're here to expose the fact that real solutions for illness and disease already exist, including those deemed irreversible. Starting tomorrow, we're going to take a serious look at the worst diseases facing Americans. One of the most shocking discoveries I made in the course of filming was that there are drugs on the market right now that say in the fine print, "This does not work," and yet doctors still prescribe them. Meanwhile, there are powerful alternatives producing incredible stories of healing. My friend Dr. Naisha Winters, for example, was too sick even to take chemo. Yet because of an accidental change in her body chemistry, she's still alive today. If you haven't been taking notes, you really might want to tomorrow. And once again, we cannot bring healing and truth to people without your support. So if you haven't already, text a friend, make a post on social media, tell a family member. Just send them to mahamovie.com, but do it now. We're under constant pressure from those who do not like this content. And someone out there could be suffering and need the information in this documentary. As my friend Naisha says,